Newcastle-upon-Tyne, commonly known as Newcastle, and historically known as Newcastle-on-Tyne, is a city and metropolitan borough in Tyne and Wear, northeast England, situated on the north bank of the River Tyne and centred 8.5 mi from the North Sea. It is the most populous city in northeast England. The city lies at the urban core of the Tyneside conurbation, which is the seventh most populous conurbation in the United Kingdom and the most populous in the northeast region. Newcastle is a member of the English Core Cities group and with Gateshead the Eurocities network of European cities. Newcastle was part of the county of Northumberland until 1400 when it became a county of itself. A status it retained until becoming part of the Tyne and Wear metropolitan county in 1974. The city grew up in the area that was the location of the Roman settlement called Pons Elius, and it owes its name to the castle built in 1080, by Robert, Duke of Normandy, Curthose, William the Conqueror's eldest son. The city grew as an important centre for the wool trade and it later became a major coal mining area. The port developed in the 16th century and, along with the shipyards lower down the river, was amongst the world's largest shipbuilding and ship repairing centres. Newcastle's economy includes corporate headquarters, learning, digital technology, retail, tourism and cultural centres. Among its main icons are Newcastle Brown Ale, a leading brand of beer, Newcastle United FC, a Premier League team, and the Tyne Bridge. It has hosted the world's most popular half-marathon, the Great North Run, since it began in 1981. The regional nickname and dialect for people from Newcastle and the surrounding area is Geordie. History. Roman. The first recorded settlement in what is now Newcastle was Pons Elius, a Roman fort and bridge across the River Tyne and given the family name of the Roman Emperor Hadrian who founded it in the 2nd century AD. The population of Pons Elius at this period was estimated at 2,000. Fragments of Hadrian's Wall are still visible in parts of Newcastle, particularly along the West Road. The course of the Roman wall can also be traced eastwards to the Segedunum Roman fort in Wallsend the Wallsend and to the supply fort Arbua in South Shields. The extent of Hadrian's Wall was 73 miles, spanning the width of Britain. The wall incorporated Agricola's ditch and was constructed primarily to prevent unwanted immigration and incursion of Pictish tribes from the north, not as a fighting line for a major invasion. Anglo-Saxon and Norman, after the Roman departure from Britain, completed in 410, Newcastle became part of the powerful Anglo-Saxon kingdom of Northumbria, and became known throughout this period as Manchester. After a series of conflicts with the Danes and the devastation north of the River Tyne inflicted by Odo of Bayeux after the 1088 rebellion against the Normans, Manchester was all but destroyed. Because of his strategic position, Robert Curthose, son of William the Conqueror, erected a wooden castle there in the year 1080 and the town was henceforth known as Novum Castlum or Newcastle. Middle Ages. Throughout the Middle Ages, Newcastle was England's northern fortress. Incorporated first by Henry II, a new charter was granted by Elizabeth in 1589. A 25-foot-high stone wall was built around the town in the 13th century, to defend it from invaders during the border war against Scotland. The Scots King William the Lion was imprisoned in Newcastle in 1174, and Edward I brought the Stone of Scone and William Wallace south through the town. Newcastle was successfully defended against the Scots 3 times during the 14th century, and was created a county corporate with its own sheriff by Henry IV in 1400. 16th to 19th century. From 1530 a royal act restricted all shipments of coal from Tyneside to Newcastle quayside, giving a monopoly in the coal trade to a cartel of Newcastle burgesses known as the Hostmen. The phrase taking coals to Newcastle was first recorded in 1538. This monopoly, which lasted for a considerable time, helped Newcastle prosper and develop into a major town. In the Sandgate area, to the east of the city and beside the river, resided the close-knit community of keelmen and their families. They were so called because they worked on the keels, boats that were used to transfer coal from the riverbanks to the waiting colliers, for export to London and elsewhere. In 1636 about 7,000 out of 20,000 inhabitants of Newcastle died of plague. During the English Civil War, Newcastle supported the king, and in 1644 the city was besieged for many months, then stormed and sacked by Cromwell's Scots allies, based in pro-Parliament Sunderland. The grateful king bestowed the motto Fortiter defendit triumphans upon the town. Ironically, Charles was imprisoned in Newcastle by the Scots in 1646 (7). In the 18th century, Newcastle was the country's fourth largest print centre after London, Oxford and Cambridge, and the Literary and Philosophical Society of 1793, with its erudite debates and large stock of books in several languages, predated the London Library by half a century. Newcastle also became a glass producer with a reputation for brilliant flint glass. In the 19th century, shipbuilding and heavy engineering were central to the city's prosperity. And the city was a powerhouse of the Industrial Revolution. This revolution resulted in the urbanization of the city. The Victorian Industrial Revolution brought industrial structures that included the 2.5-mile Victoria Tunnelling, built in 1842, which provided underground wagonways to the Staithes. On February 3, 1879, Mosley Street in the city was the first public road in the world to be lit up by the incandescent light bulb. Newcastle was one of the first cities in the world to be lit up by electric lighting. Innovation in Newcastle and surrounding areas: the development of safety lamps, Stephenson's rocket, Lord Armstrong's artillery, Beeroo flower, Joseph Swan's electric light bulbs, and Charles Parsons' invention of the steam turbine, which led to the revolution of marine propulsion and the production of cheap electricity. In 1882, Newcastle became the seat of an Anglican diocese, with St. Nicholas Church becoming its cathedral. Since 1900, Newcastle's public transport system was revolutionized in 1901 when Newcastle Corporation Tramways electric trams were introduced to the city's streets, though these were replaced by buses within 40 years. The city acquired its first art gallery, the Lying Art Gallery, in 1904, so named after its founder Alexander Lying, a Scottish wine and spirit merchant who wanted to give something back to the city in which he had made his fortune. Another art gallery, the Hatton Gallery, opened in 1925. With the advent of the motor car, Newcastle's road network was improved in the early part of the 20th century, beginning with the opening of the Red High Road Bridge in 1900 and the Tyne Bridge in 1928. Efforts to preserve the city's historic past were evident as long ago as 1934, when the Museum of Science and Industry opened, as did the John G. Joyce Museum in the same year. Council housing began to replace inner-city slums in the 1920s, and the process continued into the 1970s, along with substantial private house building and acquisition under the right to buy. Unemployment hit record heights in Newcastle during the Great Depression of the 1930s. The city's last coal pit closed in 1956. The slow demise of the shipyards on the banks of the River Tyne happened in the 1970s, 1980s and 1990s. The public sector in Newcastle began to expand in the 1960s, as more people were employed in local government administration, and Newcastle University was founded in 1963, followed by a Newcastle Polytechnic in 1969. The latter received university status in 1992 and became the Northumbria University. Further efforts to preserve the city's historic past continued as the 20th century wore on, with the opening of Newcastle Military Museum in 1983 and Stephenson Railway Museum in 1986. New developments at the turn of the 21st century included the Life Science Centre in 2000 and Millennium Bridge in 2001. Based at St James Park since 1886, Newcastle United FC became Football League members in 1893. They have won 4 top division titles, 6 FA Cups and the Inter-Cities Fairs Cup in 1969. They broke the world national transfer record in 1996 by paying £15 million for Blackburn Rovers and England striker Alan Shearer, one of the most prolific goal scorers of that era. Geography: Newcastle is situated in the northeast of England, in the ceremonial county of Tyne and Wear and the historical and traditional county of Northumberland. The city is located on the northwestern bank of the River Tyne at a latitude of 54.974° N and a longitude of 1.614° W. The ground beneath the city is formed from carboniferous strata of the Middle Pennine Coal Measures group, a suite of sandstones, mudstones and coal seams which generally dip moderately eastwards. To the west of the city are the Upper Pennine Coal Measures, and further west again the sandstones and mudstones of the Stay and Moor Formation, the local equivalent of the Millstone Grit. In large parts, Newcastle still retains a medieval street layout. Narrow alleys or chars, most of which can only be traversed by foot, still exist in abundance, particularly around the riverside. Stairs from the riverside to higher parts of the city centre and the extant castle keep, originally recorded in the 14th century, remain in places. Close, Sandhill and Quayside contain modern buildings as well as structures dating from the 15th and 18th centuries, including Bessie Surtees House, the Cooperage and Lloyd's Quayside Bars, Derwentwater House and House of Tides, a restaurant situation at a Grade I listed 16th century merchant's house at 28 to €30 close. The city has an extensive neoclassical centre referred to as Tyneside Classical, largely developed in the 1830s by Richard Grainger and John Dobson, and recently extensively restored. Broadcaster and writer Stuart Mackenney described Newcastle as England's best-looking city, and the late German-born British scholar of architecture, Nikolaus Pevsner, describes Gray's Street as one of the finest streets in England. The street curves down from Gray's Monument towards the valley of the River Tyne and was voted England's finest street in 2005 in a survey of BBC Radio 4 listeners. In the Google Street View Awards of 2010, Gray Street came third in the British Picturesque category. Osborne Road came fourth in the Foodie Street category. A portion of Grainger Town was demolished in the 1960s to make way for the Eldon Square shopping centre, including all but one side of the original Eldon Square itself. Immediately to the northwest of the city centre is Leazes Park, established in 1873 after a petition by 3,000 working men of the city for ready access to some open ground for the purpose of health and recreation. Just outside one corner of this is St James Park, the stadium home of Newcastle United FC, which dominates the view of the city from all directions. Another green space in Newcastle is the town muir, lying immediately north of the city centre. It is larger than Hyde Park and Hampstead Heath put together, and the freemen of the city have the right to graze cattle on it. The right incidentally extends to the pitch of St James Park, Newcastle United Football Club's ground, though this is not exercised, although the freemen do collect rent for the loss of privilege. Honorary freemen include Bob Geldof, King Harold V of Norway, Nelson Mandela, Bobby Robson, Alan Shearer and the Royal Shakespeare Company. The Hoppings Fun Fair, said to be the largest travelling fair in Europe, is held here annually in June. In the southeastern corner is Exhibition Park, which contains the only remaining pavilion from the Northeast Coast Exhibition of 1929. Since the 1970s this has housed the Newcastle Military Vehicle Museum. This is closed until further notice because of structural problems with the building. Originally a temporary structure. Owsburn, the wooded gorge of the Owsburn in the east of the city is known as Jesmondine and forms another popular recreation area, linked by Armstrong Park and Heaton Park to the Owsburn Valley, where the river finally reaches the River Tyne. Architecture of suburbs. Notable Newcastle housing developments include Ralph Erskine's The Byker Wall, designed in the 1960s and now Grade II listed. It is on UNESCO's list of outstanding 20th-century buildings. Chinatown. Newcastle's thriving Chinatown lies in the northwest of Grainger Town, centered on Stowell Street. A new Chinese arch, or payphang, providing a landmark entrance, was handed over to the city with a ceremony in 2005. The UK's first biotechnology village, the Centre for Life, is located in the city centre close to the central station. The village is the first step in the City Council's plans to transform Newcastle into a science city. Newcastle was voted as the best city in the North in April 2007 by the Daily Telegraph newspaper, beating Liverpool, Manchester, Sheffield and Leeds in an online poll conducted of its readers. Quayside and bridges on the Tyne. The Tyne Gorge, between Newcastle on the north bank and Gateshead the Eurocities separate town and borough on the south bank, is famous for a series of dramatic bridges, including the Tyne Bridge of 1928 which was built by Dorman Long of Middlesbrough, Robert Stevenson's high-level bridge of 1849, the first road-rail bridge in the world, and the swing bridge of 1876. Large-scale regeneration has replaced former shipping premises with imposing new office developments. An innovative tilting bridge, the Gateshead Millennium Bridge was commissioned by Gateshead Council and has integrated the older Newcastle quayside more closely with major cultural developments in Gateshead, including the Baltic Centre for Contemporary Art, the venue for the Turner Prize 2011 and the Norman Foster-designed the Sage Gateshead Music Centre. The Newcastle and Gateshead quaysides are now a thriving, cosmopolitan area with bars, restaurants and public spaces. As a tourist promotion, Newcastle and Gateshead have linked together under the banner Newcastle Gateshead, to spearhead the regeneration of the northeast. The River Tyne had the temporary Bambuco Bridge in 2008 for 10 days. It was not made for walking, road or cycling, but was just a sculpture. Grainger Town. The historic heart of Newcastle is the Grainger Town area. Established on classical streets built by Richard Grainger, a builder and developer, between 1835 and 1842, some of Newcastle-upon-Tyne's finest buildings and streets lie within this area of the city centre including Grainger Market, Theatre Royal, Grey Street, Grainger Street and Clayton Street. These buildings are predominantly 4 stories high, with vertical dormers, domes, turrets and spikes. Richard Grainger was said to have found Newcastle of bricks and timber and left it in stone. Of Grainger Town's 450 buildings, 244 are listed, of which 29 are Grade I and 49 are Grade II. Grey's Monument, which commemorates Prime Minister Earl Grey and his Reform Act of 1832, stands beside Monument Metro Station and was designed and built by Edward Hodges Bailey and Benjamin Green. Hodges, who also built the Nelson's Column, designed and built the statue, and the monument plinth was designed and built by Benjamin Green. The Grainger Market replaced an earlier market originally built in 1808 called the Butcher Market. The Grainger Market itself, was opened in 1835 and was Newcastle's first indoor market. At the time of its opening in 1835 it was said to be one of the largest and beautiful markets in Europe. And the opening was celebrated with a grand dinner attended by 2,000 guests. The Lying Art Gallery has a painting of this event. With the exception of the timber roof which was destroyed by a fire in 1901 and replaced by latticed steel arches, the market is largely in its original condition. The Grainger Market architecture, like most in Grainger Town, which are either Grade I or II listed, was listed Grade I in 1954 by English Heritage. The development of the city in the 1960s and 1970s saw the demolition of part of Grainger Town as a prelude to the modernist rebuilding initiatives of T. Dan Smith, the leader of Newcastle City Council. A corruption scandal was uncovered involving Smith and John Poulson, a property developer from Pontefract, West Yorkshire, and both were imprisoned. Echoes of the scandal were revisited in the late 1990s in the BBC TV miniseries, Our Friends in the North. Climate. The climate in Newcastle is oceanic and significantly milder than some other locations in the world at a similar latitude, due to the warming influence of the Gulf Stream. Being in the rain shadow of the North Pennines, it is among the driest cities in the UK. Temperature extremes recorded at Newcastle weather centre include 32.5 AA degrees Celsius during August 1990 down to a 12.6 AA degrees Celsius during January 1982. In contrast to other areas influenced by the Gulf Stream, such as inland Scandinavia, Newcastle has milder winters and cooler summers, similar to the remainder of the British Isles. The nearest weather station to provide sunshine statistics is at Durham, about 14 miles to the south of Newcastle city centre. Durham's inland, less urbanised setting results in nighttime temperature data about 1 degree cooler throughout the year. Economy. Newcastle played a major role during the 19th century Industrial Revolution, and was a leading centre for coal mining and manufacturing. Heavy industries in Newcastle declined in the second half of the 20th century. Office, service and retail employment are now the city's staples. The city is also today recognised for its commitment to environmental issues. with a programme planned for Newcastle to become the first carbon-neutral town. Newcastle is the commercial, educational and, in partnership with nearby Gateshead, the cultural focus for North East England. As part of Tyneside, Newcastle's economy contributes around £13 billion to the UK GVA. The central business district is in the centre of the city, bounded by Haymarket, Central Station and the quayside areas. Retail. In 2010, Newcastle was positioned 9th in the Retail Centre Expenditure League of the UK. There are several major shopping areas in Newcastle city centre. The largest of these is the Eldon Square Shopping Centre, one of the largest city centre shopping complexes in the UK. It incorporates a flagship Debenhams store as well as one of the largest John Lewis stores in the UK. John Lewis is still known to many in Newcastle as Bainbridges. Newcastle store Bainbridges, opened in 1838, is often cited as the World Euro unregistered trademark's first department store. Emerson Bainbridge, a pioneer and the founder of Bainbridges, sold goods via department, a new for merchant custom for that time. The Bainbridge Euro unregistered trademark's official ledgers reported revenue by department, giving birth to the name department store. Eldon Square is currently undergoing a full redevelopment. A new bus station, replacing the old underground bus station, was officially opened in March 2007. The wing of the centre, including the undercover Green Market, near Griner Street was demolished in 2007 so that the area could be redeveloped. This was completed in February 2010 with the opening of a flagship Debenhams department store as well as other major stores including Apple, Hollister and Guess. The main shopping street in the city is Northumberland Street. In a 2004 report, it was ranked as the most expensive shopping street in the UK for rent, outside of London. It is home to two major department stores including the first and largest Fenwick department store, which houses some of the most luxurious designer labels, and one of the largest Marks & Spencer stores outside London. Both stores have entrances into Eldon Square Shopping Centre. Other shopping destinations in Newcastle include Griner Street and the area around Gray's Monument, the relatively modern Eldon Garden and Monument Mall complexes, the Newgate Centre, Central Arcade and the traditional Griner Market. Outside the city centre, the largest suburban shopping areas are Gosforth and Byker. The largest Tesco store in the United Kingdom is located in Kingston Park on the edge of Newcastle. Close to Newcastle, the largest indoor shopping centre in Europe, the Metro Centre, is located in Gateshead. Dwelling types. In terms of housing stock, the authority is one of few authorities to see the proportion of detached homes rise. In this instance this was coupled with a similar rise in flats and waterside apartments to 25.6%, and the proportion of converted or shared houses in 2011 renders this dwelling type within the highest of the 5 colour-coded brackets at 5.9%, and on a par with Oxford and Reading, greater than Manchester and Liverpool and below a handful of historic densely occupied, arguably overinflated markets in the local authorities, Harrogate, Cheltenham, Bath, Inner London, Hastings, Brighton and Tunbridge Wells. Demography, population. According to the UK government's Return 2001 census information, the city of Newcastle had a population of 189,863, whereas the Unitary Authority of Newcastle had a population of around 259,000. Newcastle has a population of 282,442 according to the ONS. However, the metropolitan boroughs of North Tyneside, South Tyneside and Gateshead are, along with Newcastle, all part of the Tyneside conurbation. The metropolitan county of Tyne and Wear, which consists of the 4 aforementioned boroughs as well as the city of Sunderland, had a population of around 1,076,000 and the Tyne and Wear city region which also includes North Durham, South East Northumberland and the Tyne Valley has a population of 1,650,000. Newcastle is also home to a large student population with Newcastle and Northumbria universities in the local area. Areas with predominant student populations include Jesmond and Heaton. According to the same statistics, the average age of people living in Newcastle is 37.8. Many people in the city have Scottish or Irish ancestors. There is a strong presence of border River surnames, such as Armstrong, Charlton, Elliott, Johnston, Kerr, Hall, Nixon, Little and Robson. There are also small but significant Chinese, Jewish and Eastern European populations. There are also estimated to be between 500 and 2,000 Bolivians in Newcastle, forming up to 1% of the population, the largest such percentage of any UK city. Like most cities, Newcastle has diverse cross-sections and classes. The city is largely Christian at 70.6%. Muslims form 3.6%, and over 16% have no religion. Ethnicity: according to 2011 figures, the city's ethnic makeup is as follows: White British, 81.9%, Asian, 7.3%, White Other, 3.7%, Black, 2.0%, Chinese, 2.0%, Mixed Race, 1.6%, Other, 1.5%. The regional nickname for people from Newcastle and the surrounding area is Geordie. The Latin term Novocastrian, which can equally be applied to residents of any place called Newcastle, is also used for ex-pupils of the city's Royal Grammar School. Year and current total population. Dialect. The dialect of Newcastle is known as Geordie, and contains a large amount of vocabulary and distinctive word pronunciations not used in other parts of the United Kingdom. The Geordie dialect has much of its origins in the language spoken by the Anglo-Saxon populations who migrated to and conquered much of England after the end of Roman imperial rule. This language was the forerunner of modern English. But while the dialects of other English regions have been heavily altered by the influences of other foreign languages, particularly Latin and Norman Franca, the Geordie dialect retains many elements of the old language. An example of this is the pronunciation of certain words: dead, cow, house, and strong are pronounced deed, coo, whose, and strang which is how they were pronounced in the Anglo-Saxon language. Other Geordie words with Anglo-Saxon origins include larn, burn, and gan. Ben, and yem, meaning child, and home, are examples of Geordie words with origins in Scandinavia. Barn and gem are the corresponding modern Norwegian and Danish words. Some words used in the Geordie dialect are used elsewhere in the northern United Kingdom. The words bonny, away, stot, and hadaway, all appear to be used in Scots. I, and nout are used elsewhere in northern England. Many words, however, appear to be used exclusively in Newcastle and the surrounding area, such as canny, hacky, netty, hoy, hockle. Health. The health of people in Newcastle-upon-Tyne is generally worse than the England average. Deprivation is higher than average and 16,670 children live in poverty. Life expectancy for both men and women is lower than the England average. Life expectancy is 14.3 years lower for men and 11.1 years lower for women in some of the most deprived areas of Newcastle-upon-Tyne than in certain least deprived areas. From 2001 to 2011, as with all UK cities, all-cause mortality rates have fallen, life expectancy has increased. Early death rates from cancer and from heart disease and stroke have fallen but remain worse than the English average. About 21.9% of Year 6 children are classified as obese. 54.9% of pupils meet the recommendation of at least 3 hours each week on school sport. Levels of teenage pregnancy and GCSE attainment are worse than the England average. Estimated levels of adult healthy eating and smoking are worse than the England average. Rates of smoking-related deaths and hospital stays for alcohol-related harm are higher than average. Newcastle Hospital's NHS Foundation Trust has one of the lowest mortality rates in the country and is ranked 7th in the country for confidence in doctors. Newcastle has 2 large teaching hospitals, the Royal Victoria Infirmary and the Freeman Hospital, which is also a pioneering centre for transplant surgery. In a report, published in early February 2007 by the Ear Institute at the University College London, and WIDGS, a Danish hearing aid manufacturer, Newcastle was named as the noisiest city in the whole of the UK, with an average level of 80.4 decibels. The report claimed that these noise levels would have a negative long-term impact on the health of the city's residents. The report was criticised, however, for attaching too much weight to readings at arbitrarily selected locations, which in Newcastle's case included a motorway underpass without pedestrian access. Culture, nightlife. Newcastle was in the top 10 of the country's top night spots, and the Rough Guide to Britain placed Newcastle-upon-Tyne's nightlife as Great Britain's #1 tourist attraction. In the TripAdvisor Travelers Euro unregistered trademark choice destination awards for European nightlife destinations, 4 of the UK's night spots finished in the top 10. Newcastle was awarded third place behind London and Berlin. Newcastle also came in 7th for the world category. There are concentrations of pubs, bars and nightclubs around the Big Market, and the quayside area of the city centre. There are many bars on the Big Market, and other popular areas for nightlife are Collingwood Street, popularly referred to as the Diamond Strip due to its concentration of high-end bars, Neville Street, the Central Station area and Osborne Road in the Jesmond area of the city. In recent years the Gate has opened in the city centre, a new indoor complex consisting of bars, upmarket clubs, restaurants and a 12-screen Empire multiplex cinema. Newcastle's gay scene The Pink Triangle is centred around the Times Square area near the Centre for Life and has a range of bars, cafes copyrights and clubs. The city has a wide variety of restaurants such as Italian, Indian, Persian, Japanese, Greek, Mexican, Spanish, American, Polish, Malaysian, French, Mongolian, Moroccan, Thai food, Vietnamese, Lebanese. Newcastle is one of 7 cities in the UK that is a Chinese village with many Chinese restaurants on Stowell Street. There has also been a growth in premium restaurants in recent years with top chefs. Theatre. The city has a proud history of theatre. Stephen Kemble of the famous Kemble family successfully managed the original Theatre Royal, Newcastle for 15 years. He brought members of his famous acting family such as Sarah Siddons and John Kemble out of London to Newcastle. Stephen Kemble guided the theatre through many celebrated seasons. The original Theatre Royal was opened on January 21, 1788 and was located on Mosley Street, next to Drury Lane. The city still contains many theatres. The largest, the Theatre Royal on Grey Street, first opened in 1837, designed by John and Benjamin Green. It has hosted a season of performances from the Royal Shakespeare Company for over 25 years, as well as touring productions of West End musicals. The River Tyne Theatre hosts smaller touring productions, whilst other venues feature local talent. Northern Stage, formerly known as the Newcastle Playhouse and Gulbenkian Studio, hosts various local, national and international productions in addition to those produced by the Northern Stage Company. Other theatres in the city include the Live Theatre, the People's Theatre, and the Jubilee Theatre. Newcastle Gateshead was voted in 2006 as the arts capital of the UK in a survey conducted by the Arts World TV channel. Literature and libraries. Newcastle has a strong reputation as a poetry centre. The Morden Tower, run by poet Tom Pickard, is a major venue for poetry readings in the northeast, being the place where Basil Bunting gave the first reading of Briglates in 1965. The Literary and Philosophical Society of Newcastle-upon-Tyne is the largest independent library outside London, housing more than 150,000 books. Its music library contains 8,000 CDs and 10,000 LPs. The current Lit and Phil premises were built in 1825 and the building was designed by John and Benjamin Green. Operating since 1793 and founded as AA Euro Conversation Club, a Euro unregistered trademark, its lecture theatre was the first public building to be lit by electric light, during a lecture by Joseph Swan on October 20, 1880. The Old City Library, designed by Basil Spence, was demolished in 2006 and replaced. The new building opened on June 21, 2009 and was named after 18th-century composer Charles Avison. The building was opened by Dr. Herbert Loob. The Seven Stories is a museum dedicated to children's books. Opened in 2005, it is based in the Owlsburn Valley. Festivals and fairs. In January or February, Newcastle's Chinatown is at the center of a carnival of color and noise as the city celebrates the Chinese New Year. In early March there is the Newcastle Gateshead Comedy Festival. This event makes a return to the region since the last event in 2006. It is hoped it will now continue as an annual event. The Newcastle Science Festival, now called Newcastle Science Fest, returns annually in early March. The Newcastle Beer Festival, organised by CAMRA, takes place in April. In May, Newcastle and Gateshead host the Evolution Festival, a music festival held on the Newcastle and Gateshead quaysides over the spring bank holiday, with performances by acts from the world of rock, indie and dance music. The biennial AV Festival of International Electronic Art, featuring exhibitions, concerts, conferences and film screenings, is held in March. The Northeast Art Expo, a festival of art and design from the region's professional artists, is held in late May. EAT Newcastle Gateshead, a festival of food and drink, runs for 2 weeks each year in mid-June. The Hoppings, reputedly the largest travelling fair in Europe, takes place on Newcastle-on-Tyne every June. The event has its origins in the temperance movement during the early 1880s and coincides with the annual race week at Highgate Park. Newcastle Community Green Festival, which claims to be the UK's biggest free community environmental festival, also takes place every June, in Leazes Park. The Northern Rock Cyclone, a cycling festival, takes place within, or starting from, Newcastle in June. The Northern Pride Festival and Parade is held in Leazes Park and in the city's gay community in mid-July. The Owlsburn Festival, a family-oriented weekend festival near the city centre, incorporating a family fun day, and Carnival Day, is held in late July. Newcastle Mela, held on the late August bank holiday weekend, is an annual 2-day multicultural event, blending drama, music and food from Punjabi, Pakistani, Bengali and Hindu cultures. Newcastle Gateshead also holds an annual international arts fair. The 2009 event will be in the Norman Foster Designs Sage Gateshead Music and Arts Centre in September. In October, there is the design event Stivler Euro, an annual festival providing the public with an opportunity to see work by regional, national and international designers. The SAMA Festival, an East Asian cultural festival, is also held in early October. Music. The 1960s saw the internationally successful rock group The Animals emerge from Newcastle night spots such as Club Bay Go-Go on Percy Street. Other well-known acts with connections to the city include Sting, Brian Ferry, Dire Straits and more recently Maximo Park. There is also a thriving underground music scene that encompasses a variety of styles, including drum and bass, doom metal and post-rock. Lindisfarne are a folk rock group with a strong Tyneside connection. Their most famous song, Fog on the Tyne, was covered by Geordie ex-footballer Paul Gascoigne in 1990. Venom, reckoned by many to be the originators of black metal and extremely influential to the extreme metal scene as a whole, formed in Newcastle in 1979. Folk metal band Skyclad, often regarded as the first folk metal band, also formed in Newcastle after the breakup of Martin Walkyier thrash metal band, Sabbat. Andy Taylor, former lead guitarist of Duran Duran, was born here in 1961. Newcastle is the home of Kitchenware Records, previously home to acclaimed bands such as Prefab Sprout, Martin Stevenson and the Dainties and the Fatima Mansions, the management of the Lighthouse family and home to recent successes Editors and Sirens, as well as other bands of varied genres. The 1990s boom in progressive house music saw the city's global underground record label publish mixed CDs by the likes of Sasha, Paul Oakenfold, James Lavelle, and Danny Howells recording mix compilations. The label is still going strong today with offices in London and New York, and new releases from Deep Dish and Adam Freeland. Concert venues. The largest music venue in the city is the 11,000-seat Metro Radio Arena, which is situated in the south of the city centre near the Centre for Life. The 2,000-seat Newcastle City Hall holds a number of music events every month, particularly featuring solo artists. Both of the city's universities also have large performance venues. On October 14, 2005, the 2,000-capacity O2 Academy Newcastle opened, providing a new music venue in the city centre. The opening night was headlined by the Future Heads, and the profile of the venue has attracted a greater variety of bands to play in the city. The O2 Academy Newcastle is one in a string of academies to be opened across the UK. Other popular music venues in the city include Newcastle Riverside Music Venue, the Head of Steam, which is near Newcastle Central Railway Station, and Trillions Rock Bar at Princess Square. The Colney and the Cumberland Arms are both situated in the Owlsburn Valley between the city centre and Byker. Cinema. Apart from the city centre chain cinema, the Empire Multiplex, the city has its own independent cinema, the Tyneside Cinema. The Tyneside Cinema, on Pilgrim Street, originally opened as the Bijou Newsreel Cinema in 1937, and was designed and built by Dixon Scott, great-uncle of film directors Ridley Scott and Tony Scott. The Pilgrim Street building was refurbished between November 2006 and May 2008. During the refurbishment works, the cinema relocated to the Old Town Hall, Gateshead. In May 2008 the Tyneside Cinema reopened in the restored and refurbished original building. The site currently houses 3 cinemas, including the restored Classica Euro, the United Kingdom's last surviving news cinema still in full-time operation, a Euro alongside 2 new screens, a roof extension containing the Tyneside Bar, and dedicated education and teaching suites. Museums and galleries. There are several museums and galleries in Newcastle, including the Centre for Life with its Science Village. The Discovery Museum, a museum highlighting life on Tyneside, including Tyneside's shipbuilding heritage, and inventions which changed the world. The Great North Museum. The Gallagher and Turner Gallery. The Lying Art Gallery. The Biscuit Factory. Bain. 7 Stories, a museum dedicated to children's books, the Side Gallery, historical and contemporary photography from around the world and Northern England, and the Newburn Hall Motor Museum. The Lying Art Gallery, like other art galleries and museums around the world, has collections digitized on the Google Cultural Institute, an initiative that makes important cultural material accessible online. In film. The earliest known movie featuring some exterior scenes filmed in the city is On the Night of the Fire, though by and large the action is studio-bound. Later came The Clouded Yellow and Payroll, both of which feature more extensive scenes filmed in the city. The 1971 film Get Carter was shot on location in and around Newcastle and offers an opportunity to see what Newcastle looked like in the 1960s and early 1970s. The city was also backdrop to another gangster film, the 1988 film noir thriller Stormy Monday, directed by Mike Figgis and starring Tommy Lee Jones, Melanie Griffith, Sting and Sean Bean. More recently the city has been the setting for films based around football. Films such as Purely Belter, The One and Only and Goal have all been focused around Tyneside. The comedy School for Seduction starring Kelly Brook was also filmed in Newcastle. The Bollywood film Hum Tum Ghost was shot on location in Newcastle's city centre and features key scenes in and around Grainger town. The 2009 film Public Sex was shot in and around Newcastle and features several scenes under and around the Tyne Bridge. Sport. The city has a strong sporting tradition. Football club Newcastle United has been based at St James Park since the club was established in 1892, although any traces of the original structure are now long gone, as the stadium now holds more than 52,000 seated spectators, being England's 4th largest football stadium. The city also has non-league football clubs, Newcastle Benfield, West Allotment Celtic and Team Northumbria. As for rugby, the Newcastle Falcons are the only team in North East England to have played in the Aviva Premiership Rugby Union. They play at Kingston Park Stadium in the northern suburb of Kingston Park. 1996 Pilkington Shield winners Medicals RFC are also based in Newcastle. There is a women's football team, Newcastle United Women's Football Club, founded in 1989. Newcastle United WFC currently has 40 ladies aged between 16 and 29 years signed or associated with the club, and plays in the FA Women unregistered trademark S Premier League. Newcastle has a horse racing course at Goesforth Park. The city is also home to the Newcastle Eagles basketball team who play their home games at the new Sports Central complex at Northumbria University. The city's speedway team Newcastle Diamonds are based at Borough Park in Byker, a venue that is also home to greyhound racing. Newcastle also hosts the start of the annual Great North Run, the world's largest half-marathon in which participants race over the Tyne Bridge into Gateshead and then towards the finish line 13.1 miles away on the coast at South Shields. Another famous athletic event is the 5.9-mile Blaydon Race, which has taken place on June 9 annually since 1981, to commemorate the celebrated Blaydon Race's horse racing. The 2012 London Olympic Committee selected Newcastle as one of the UK host venue cities. With the Stadium St James a Euro-1 registered trademark park hosting 9 matches in both the men a Euro-1 registered trademark S and women's football. The Newcastle Warriors were a professional ice hockey team that played the 1995 a Euro 96 season in the British Hockey League. Government. Newcastle is governed using the leader and cabinet system, and the executive is Labour, as they have 51 councillors against the Liberal Democrats' 26. No other parties hold seats on the city's council, however there is one independent councillor. For the purposes of city council elections, Newcastle is divided into 26 electoral wards. Transport. Airport. Newcastle International Airport is located approximately 6 miles from the city centre on the northern outskirts of the city near Pontland and is the largest of the 2 main airports serving the northeast. It is connected to the city via the Metro light rail system and a journey into Newcastle city centre takes approximately 20 minutes. The airport handles over 5 million passengers per year, and is the 10th largest, and the fastest growing regional airport in the UK, expecting to reach 10 million passengers by 2016, and 15 million by 2030. As of 2007, over 90 destinations are available worldwide. Rail. Newcastle Railway Station, also known as Newcastle Central Station, is a principal stop on the East Coast Main Line and cross-country route. Central Station is one of the busiest stations in Britain. In 2014, work was completed on the station's historic entrance. Glazing was placed over the historic arches and the Victorian architecture was enhanced, transforming the 19th-century public portico. The station is one of only 6 Grade 1 listed railway stations in the UK. Opened in 1850 by Queen Victoria, it was the first covered railway station in the world and was much copied across the UK. It has a neoclassical 4-section nave, originally designed by the architect John Dobson, and was constructed in collaboration with Robert Stevenson. The station's sightlines towards the castle keep, whilst showcasing the curvature of the station a Euro-1 registered trademark S-arched roof. The first services were operated by the North Eastern Railway Company. The city's other main-line station, Manners, is to the east of the city centre. Train operator East Coast provides a half-hourly frequency of trains to London King's Cross, with a journey time of about 3 hours. Other destinations on the East Coast Main Line include to the south: Durham, Darlington, York, Doncaster and Peterborough, and north to Scotland, with all trains calling at Edinburgh and some extended to Glasgow, Aberdeen and Inverness. Cross-country trains serve destinations in Yorkshire, the Midlands and the South West including Birmingham, Bournemouth, Bristol, Derby, Leeds, Plymouth, Sheffield and Reading. First TransPennine Express operates services to Manchester and Liverpool. Northern Rail provides local and regional services to Carlisle, Hexham, Sunderland, Middlesbrough and Morpeth. Metro. The city is served by the Tyne and Wear Metro, a system of suburban and underground railways covering much of Tyne and Wear. It was opened in 5 phases between 1980 and 1984, and was Britain's first urban light rail transit system. 2 extensions were opened in 1991 and 2002. It was developed from a combination of existing and newly built tracks and stations, with deep-level tunnels constructed through Newcastle city centre. A bridge was built across the Tyne, between Newcastle and Gateshead, and opened by Queen Elizabeth II in 1981. The network is operated by DB Regio on behalf of Nexus and carries over 37 million passengers a year, extending as far as Newcastle Airport, Teignmouth, South Shields and South Hilton in Sunderland. In 2004, the company Marconi designed and constructed the mobile radio system to the underground metro system. The metro system was the first in the UK to have mobile phone antennae installed in the tunnels. The metro consists of two lines. The Green Line starts at Newcastle Airport, goes through the city centre and into Sunderland, terminating at South Hilton. The Yellow Line starts at St James Park, runs north of the river alongside Byker towards Whitley Bay, before returning to the city, onto Gateshead and terminates at South Shields. Road. Major roads in the area include the A1, stretching north to Edinburgh and south to London. The A19 heading south past Sunderland and Middlesbrough to York and Doncaster. The A69 heading west to Carlisle. The A696, which becomes the A68, heads past Newcastle Airport and up through central Northumberland and central Scottish borders. The A167, the Old Great North Road, heading south to Gateshead, Chester Street, Durham and Darlington. And the A1058 Coast Road, which runs from Jesmond to the east coast between Teignmouth and Cullercoats. Many of these designations are recent upon completion of the Western Bypass, and its designation as the new line of the A1. The roads between this and the A1's former alignment through the Tyne Tunnel were renumbered, with many city centre roads changing from a 6 prefix to their present 1 prefix numbers. In November 2011, the capacity of the Tyne Tunnel was increased when a project to build a second road tunnel and refurbish the first tunnel was completed. Bus. There are 3 main bus companies providing services in the city. Arriva Northeast, Go Northeast and Stagecoach Northeast. There are 2 major bus stations in the city, Haymarket Bus Station and Eldon Square Bus Station. Arriva mainly operates from Haymarket Bus Station, providing the majority of services to the north of Newcastle, Northumberland and North Tyneside. Go Ahead operates from Eldon Square Bus Station, providing the majority of services south of the river in Gateshead, South Tyneside, Sunderland, and County Durham. Stagecoach is the primary operator in the city proper, with cross-city services mainly between both the west and east ends via the city centre, with some services extending out to the metro centre, Killingworth, Wallsend and Pontland. Bus services in Newcastle-upon-Tyne and the surrounding boroughs part of the Tyne and Wear area are coordinated by Nexus, the Tyne and Wear Passenger Transport Executive. Other major departure points are Pilgrim Street for buses running south of the Tyne via Gateshead, and Blackett Street Monument for services to the east or west of the city. Many bus services also pass Newcastle Central Station, a major interchange for rail and metro services. Keylink is a bus service operated to the quayside from Newcastle and Gateshead. Newcastle Coach Station, near the railway station, handles long-distance bus services operated by National Express. Cycle. Newcastle is accessible by several mostly traffic-free cycle routes that lead to the edges of the city centre, where cyclists can continue into the city by road, using no-car lanes. The traffic-free C2C cycle route runs along the north bank of the River Tyne, enabling cyclists to travel off-road to North Shields and Teignmouth in the east, and westwards towards Hexham. Suburban cycle routes exist, which utilise converted track beds of former industrial wagonways and industrial railways. A network on Tyne is the Euro unregistered trademark S suburban Victorian wagonways is being developed. A network of signed on-road cycle routes is being established, including some designated on-road cycle lanes that will lead from the city centre to the suburbs of Gosforth, Heaton and Wallsend. Newcastle has a growing culture of bicycle usage. Newcastle is also home to a cycling campaign, called the A Newcastle Cycling Campaign, a Euro unregistered trademark. The ideal of the organisation is to model other European cities like Amsterdam and Copenhagen. The aims of the organisation, within the constitution, are to raise the profile of cycling, especially utility cycling around the city, to educate decision-makers over the benefits of cycling, to promote equality. Following guidelines set in the National Cycling Strategy, Newcastle first developed its cycling strategy in 1998. As of 2012, the local authority's social aims and objectives for cycling include highlighting the usage of cycling to cut city congestion, educating that cycling promotes healthy living. The authority also has infrastructure aims and objectives which include developing on-road cycle networks on quieter streets, making safer routes on busier streets, innovating and implementing contraflows on one-way streets, developing the existing off-road cycle route networks and improve signage, joining up routes that are partially or completely isolated, increase the number of cycle parking facilities, working with employers to integrate cycling into workplace travel plans, link the local networks to national networks. Water, from Newcastle International Ferry Terminal, at North Shields, Danish DFDS Seaways run a service to IJmuiden. The DFDS ferry service to Gothenburg, Sweden, ceased at the end of October 2006. The company cited high fuel prices and new competition from low-cost air services as the cause. And their service to Bergen and Stavanger, Norway was terminated late 2008. Since summer 2007, Thomson Cruise Lines have included Newcastle as a departure port on its Norwegian and Fjords cruise. Education. There are 11 LEA-funded 11 to 18 schools and 7 independent schools with sixth forms in Newcastle. There are a number of successful state schools, including Walker Technology College, Gosforth High School, Heaton Manor School, St Cuthbert's High School, St Mary's Catholic Comprehensive School, Kenton School, George Stephenson High School, Sacred Heart and Benfield School. The largest co-ed independent school is the Royal Grammar School. The largest girls' independent school is Central Newcastle High School. Both schools are located on the same street in Jesmond. Another notable girls' independent school in Jesmond is Newcastle-upon-Tyne Church High School located at Tankerville Terrace. Newcastle School for Boys is the only independent boys-only school in the city and is situated in Gosforth. Newcastle College is the largest general further education college in the northeast and is a Beacon status college. There are 2 smaller colleges in the Newcastle area. St Cuthbert's High School and Sacred Heart are the 2 primary state Catholic-run high schools, and are both achieving results on par with the independent schools in Newcastle. Tyne Theatre Stage School is a stage school in Newcastle-upon-Tyne. Tertiary. The city has 2 universities: Newcastle University and Northumbria University. Newcastle University has its origins in the School of Medicine and Surgery, established in 1834 and became independent from Durham University on August 1, 1963 to form the University of Newcastle-upon-Tyne. Newcastle University is now one of the UK's leading international universities. It won the coveted Sunday Times University of the Year award in 2000. Northumbria University has its origins in the Newcastle Polytechnic, established in 1969 and became the University of Northumbria at Newcastle in 1992 as part of the UK-wide process in which polytechnics became new universities. Northumbria University was voted Best New University by the Times Good University Guide 2005 and also won a much-coveted Company Award of the Most IT-Enabled Organisation, by the IT industry magazine Computing. Religious sites. Newcastle has 3 cathedrals, the Anglican St Nicholas, with its elegant lantern tower of 1474, the Roman Catholic St Mary's designed by Augustus Welby Pugin, and the Coptic Cathedral located in Fenham. All 3 cathedrals began their lives as parish churches. St Mary's became a cathedral in 1850 and St Nicholas in 1882. Another prominent church in the city centre is the Church of St Thomas the Martyr, which is the only parish church in the Church of England without a parish and which is not a peculiar. One of the largest evangelical Anglican churches in the UK is Jesmond Parish Church, situated a little to the north of the city centre. Newcastle is home to the only Borough unregistered trademark centre in northeast England. The centre has served the local Borough unregistered trademarker community for over 25 years and is located close to the Civic Centre in Jesmond. Newcastle was a prominent centre of the Plymouth Brethren movement up to the 1950s, and some small congregations still function. Among these are at the Hall, Denmark Street and Gospel Hall, St. Lawrence. The parish church of St. Andrew is traditionally recognised as the oldest church in this town. The present building was begun in the 12th century and the last addition to it, apart from the vestries, was the main porch in 1726. It is quite possible that there was an earlier church here dating from Saxon times. This older church would have been one of several churches along the River Tyne dedicated to St. Andrew, including the Priory Church at Hexham. The building contains more old stonework than any other church in Newcastle. It is surrounded by the last of the ancient churchyards to retain its original character. Many key names associated with Newcastle's history worshipped and were buried here. The church tower received a battering during the siege of Newcastle by the Scots, who finally breached a town wall and forced surrender. 3 of the cannonballs remain on site as testament to the siege. Media. Local newspapers that are printed in Newcastle include Trinity Mirror's Evening Chronicle and The Journal, The Sunday Sun, as well as the Metro Freesheet. The Crack is a monthly style-on listings magazine similar to London's Time Out. The adult comic Viz originated in Jesmond and includes many references to Newcastle, and the mag is a fanzine for Newcastle United supporters. ITV Tyne Tees was based at City Road for over 40 years after its launch in January 1959. In 2005 it moved to a new facility on the Watermark Business Park next to the Metro Centre in Gateshead. The entrance to Studio 5 at the City Road complex gave its name to the 1980s music television programme, The Tube. BBC North East and Cumbria is located to the north of the city on Barrack Road, Spittal Tongues, in a building known, as the result of its colouring, as the Pink Palace. It is from here that the corporation broadcasts the Look North television regional news programme and local radio station BBC Radio Newcastle. Independent local radio stations include Metro Radio and sister station Magic 1152, which are both based in a building on the Swan House roundabout on the north side of the Tyne Bridge. Capital North East broadcasts across Newcastle from its studios in nearby Wallsend. Real Radio and Smooth Radio both broadcast from Team Valley and Gateshead. NE1 FM launched on June 8, 2007, the first full-time community radio station in the area. Newcastle Student Radio is run by students from both of the city's universities, broadcasting from Newcastle University's Students' Union building during term time. Radio Tyneside has been the voluntary hospital radio service for most hospitals across Newcastle and Gateshead since 1951, broadcasting on Hospedia and online. The city also has a Radio Lollipop station based at the Great North Children's Hospital and the Newcastle Royal Victoria Infirmary. Newcastle is one of the first in the UK to have its city centre covered by wireless internet access. It was developed and installed at the end of 2006 and went active in March 2007. Notable people: Charles Avison, the leading British composer of concertos in the 18th century, was born in Newcastle-upon-Tyne in 1709 and died there in 1770. Cardinal Basil Hume, Archbishop of Westminster, was born in the city in 1923. Vice Admiral Cuthbert Collingwood, 1st Baron Collingwood, born in Newcastle-upon-Tyne. Admiral of the Royal Navy, a partner with Horatio Nelson in many sea victories, and as Nelson's successor after Trafalgar, completing the destruction of the Napoleonic fleet. The ironmaster, metallurgist, and Member of Parliament Isaac Lothian Bell was born in the city in 1816. Other notable people born in or associated with Newcastle include, engineer and industrialist Lord Armstrong, engineer and father of the modern steam railways George Stephenson, his son, also an engineer, Robert Stephenson, engineer and inventor of the steam turbines Sir Charles Parsons, inventor of the incandescent light bulb Sir Joseph Swan, modernist poet Basil Bunting, Lord Chief Justice Peter Taylor, the Portuguese writer A. Seccionar de Queiroz, who was a diplomat in Newcastle from late 1874 until April 1879, his most productive literary period, the Prime Minister of Thailand Abhisit Vejjajiva, singers Eric Burdon, Sting and Brian Johnson, lead singer of AC/DC from 1980 to the present, actor Charlie Hunnam, Days of Our Lives actor James Scott, multiple circumnavigator David Scott Cooper, Neil Tennant, Alan Hull, Mark Knopfler, Hank Marvin, Bruce Welch, Cheryl Cole, entertainers Anton Deck, and international footballers Michael Carrick and Alan Shearer. Peter Higgs, the 2013 Nobel Prize for Physics-winning scientist and the man who first predicted and theorized the Higgs boson, was born in Newcastle. John Herdman, coach of the Canadian women's national soccer team. John Dunn, inventor of keyed Northumbrian small pipes, the most characteristic musical instrument in the region, lived and worked in the city. International relations, twin towns are Euro sister cities. Newcastle-upon-Tyne is twinned with friendship agreements. Newcastle also has a friendship agreement with Little Rock, United States. Foreign consulates. The following countries have consular representation in Newcastle: Belgium, France, Germany, Iceland, Italy, Norway, and Sweden. See also: Duke of Newcastle, Great Fire of Newcastle and Gateshead, List of tallest buildings and structures in Newcastle-upon-Tyne. Pensities Street, Stephen's Church, Low Elsick. References, Notes. Bibliography. External links: City of Newcastle-upon-Tyne, City of Newcastle-upon-Tyne website, official Newcastle Gateshead tourism site, BBC Tyne BBC local website.